Hi, everyone. Welcome to Join Jackie, Mondays at 10. Today, a bit chilly. We've got that for a few months yet. I'm going to be talking about what is a trust. So hopefully this is helpful. This video, while live, will also be saved onto the page. So if you come in partway through, you can re-watch it, or if this is something that you want to share with someone else later, of course, you can tag their name in the comments, or you can share it with them via Messenger. So the basics is that a trust is the legal concept of someone holding assets on behalf of someone else. So it's a formal arrangement. It's not necessarily registered anywhere, though. And the asset that could be held for the beneficiary could be cash, shares, a combination. It could be a business. It could be real estate. So it could be a whole lot of things. So that's in the very simplest form. However, over time, of course, there's been various forms of trust develop, and the complexity has increased as well. So the person holding the assets for someone else is called the trustee, and the person on whose behalf the assets are being held is the beneficiary. Is a very simple form of trust. However, over time, again, different forms have developed. So there are forms of trust that are created under a will, and they are called testamentary trusts. You can have multiple different types. The most common type that people talk about is a testamentary discretionary trust or a testamentary minors trust. You can also have a testamentary protective trust, testamentary charitable trust, testamentary education trust. So there's all sorts of forms of trusts that you can create in a will, and they're testamentary because they're created under a will. So setting that aside for a second, you can also set up trusts while you're alive, of course. So most common would be a family trust. So most people would have heard of a family trust. This is the form of a discretionary trust most of the time. So it is created for a group of beneficiaries rather than usually a specific person or just a couple of people, which is also why it's discretionary, because no one in the family particularly owns a part or has a entitlement to a particular part of the trust. So the trustee holds everything for the family, and it's at the trustee's complete discretion as to who gets income and who gets capital, or if at all. So that's a family discretionary trust. You can have unit trusts or fixed trusts, which are very similar. So that is where you actually do own a proportion, almost like shares in a company. So you'd own, say, 50% of the units, and then you'd be entitled to 50% of the income and 50% of the capital of the trust. So that a unit or fixed trust is more likely to be used between people who are running a business together who are not family members. You can have special disability trusts. Now, this is really important to think about for someone who has Centrelink benefits, and you want to set aside assets for that person, but you don't want their asset test to be affected and have their pension or their NDIS affected in any way by them owning more. So a special disability trust allows you to put, it's close to up to 600,000 into it without it being counted as part of their asset. So, you know, a fairly simple house could go in there for someone. Inheritance could go into that for someone. So that's another form of trust. Self-managed super is also a form of trust. When self-managed super funds want to borrow money to buy real estate, they have to create a bare trust. So that's another form of trust. So what is a trust is a very broad sort of question. So I've tried to give you a broad understanding as well that trusts can almost be whatever you like and can be created for whatever situation. So they can be testamentary to protect your inheritance in certain ways. They can be to grow your family's wealth during life. They can be to run a business. They can be to help someone disabled. So all sorts of forms of trusts are available. And the roles in the trust, just like, for example, the roles in the will, are fairly important. So the trustee is important. So who is controlling the assets and who is running the show? Often it's a corporate trustee appointed, but not necessarily. It can be individuals and it can be multiple people. Who the beneficiaries are is important in a fixed or unit trust. The definition of who is in the class of beneficiaries in a family trust is important, and whether you include, for example, stepchildren, foster children, broader classes, ex-spouses of children, and further descendants. And the other important role to think about is the appointer or guardian. So there are often it is one role, but it can be divided out into two. So the guardian role, for example, could be a special person who has to consent to certain decisions of the trustee. So the trustee can't do certain things without the guardian saying yes. But more often it's one role called the appointer, which is, and it's called the appointer because they can appoint or sack the trustee at any time. So the appointer is often the main controlling power. And although they don't do anything practically on a day-to-day basis, it's this appointer role that we have to look at, particularly when we look at succession for family trusts and who actually has ultimate control and who's going to control it in the next generation. The appointer can sack the trustee if the trustee is not doing what they want. So they have the ultimate power and they can appoint a new trustee that they control. So there you are. I hope that's helpful. I hope it's not too much information. If you do have any more questions, please don't hesitate to DM me through this page, or on the page, there's also a link to our website, so you can head over to that. The Meet the Team page has all our direct emails available, so you can email us at any time. Have a great week. I'll catch you next Monday.